Curtis Sliwa, we've heard this scenario a million times. The bad guys have guns.
Yeah, well, that's fear.
How can you fight, you know?
That's fear, fright, hysteria, hype. And I speak of someone, you may have remembered, John Gotti Jr. was on trial 4 times for trying to have me executed. I got shot with 5 hollow point bullets in the back of a yellow cab for speaking out against organized crime, the Gambino crime family in New York. So I know exactly what it is to get shot and to have somebody target you and stalk you. But that's at a much higher level. That's organized crime. We're talking the open thuggery in the streets, and I understand what he's saying. First off, you have young men, young women serving over in Iraq and Afghanistan now who could get killed by an IED they can't even see. And many have. And many have been wounded to the point where they'll never recover, physically or mentally. They're impaired for life. Yet we still keep sending them over there. I question that. Those people, I wonder if they even appreciate that. You mean to tell me we're not going to ask our young men, young women here in America to step up and take chances and risks for their own families, their own neighborhoods, their own children and grandchildren? To me, it's sort of like, wait, we're asking them to be brave in foreign countries and not here? We're not breaking the law. We don't have any weapons, you're correct. We could be a target. But when you train and you have a discipline and you understand, you're not there to set it off. You're not there to prove who's more macho. 9 times out of 10, you're not putting yourself in harm's way. In those instances where somebody is intent on doing you harm because of what you represent, what you're doing. That's what we train to do. We just set all kinds of scenarios up. We role play. We don't just put young men and young women into harm's way. And we have a 32-year track record. Now, we've had 6 young men shot and killed in the line of duty, 3 dozen seriously injured. I was shot up in the summer of 1992. Since 1993, we haven't had a serious injury. And the reason that is that was the time the police decided to cooperate with us instead of ignore us. And now you have all kinds of wireless technology. You have cell phones. You have different ways of getting into contact with the police. Some of our cities have given police radios to the guardian angels on patrol. Washington, D.C., even Easton, Pennsylvania, home of former world champion Larry Holmes. There are places now in which the cooperation is great, and it has kept a lot of guardian angels out of harm's way. Those first 13 years when we had no cooperation, that's when we were out on our own.
Our guest is Curtis Sliwa. He is the founder of the Guardian Angels. Curtis, you can see we've got the phones pumping. Ronnie, good morning. You're on V-103. Well, thank you for your call. Any reaction, Curtis?
Well, remember, the C.T.A. is your veins and arteries in the city.
Right.
It's how most people get around, particularly the poor and impoverished, the indigent, the lower middle class, and middle class. They don't have Jeeves with the stretch limo. They don't have a silver spoon in their mouth big enough to offset the trade balance between Red China that holds our VIG and the United States. So you're there protecting the people who are the catalyst to making the city of Chicago work. As the mayor and everyone else will say, the grease to the economic engine, the people who do the heavy lifting, the work. Why shouldn't they have a little peace of mind when catching a C.T.A. bus or a C.T.A. train to be able to max and relax, read a newspaper, just chill out a little bit without having to constantly look over their back with a third eye, call it the evil eye, the maluk, thinking that they're going to be targeted, they're going to be victimized because they happen to be taking mass transit. That's wrong.
We have what police have described as flash mobs attacking again and again and again, especially now in the downtown area, Gold Coast, Streeterville. We see this all the time in the hood, Curtis Sliwa. You're aware of that. But now that it's come downtown to the Mag Mile, a whole bunch of police attention is surrounding that. What are the Guardian Angels doing to protect us from the flash mobs? And what's your notion about this flash mob concept?
Well, Third Rail, Miguel Fuentes, our national director who runs the Chicago group, got in touch with me immediately when this phenomenon really first started to roll out. I had experience in Philadelphia where it really started. Wolfpacking started, swirling, all these terms. They all seem to start in Philadelphia, and then, like a virus, they just go into the inner city across America. It was actually art students at Drexel University who started flash mobbing. Because what they would do is they would assemble all these artsy-fartsy folks. They would stand in the middle of South Street, which is their tourist area, and they would pose. And then photographers would go click, 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 click. So, you know, it's like RuPaul and Drag Race, pose. And that was considered art, you know, street art. And then some of the homeboys were looking at that saying, man, we could take full advantage of this. We got wireless. We got our cellies. We can tweet. We can text. 1 became 10, 10 became 100, 100 became 1,000. And on that same South Street, 1,000 young men and women, just like locusts through the cornfield, said, look, all these trendy shops, boutiques, we'll go through there. They can't grab all of us. And they just started woofing people and knocking people out and grabbing stuff. And all of a sudden, everybody had an X-Lax attack in Center City and City Hall. They didn't know what to do. They finally determined, ooh, we should do a little mob squad action. Remember the mod squad when we were growing up? Get some teenagers who are reserve cops or auxiliaries, let them get into the network. So the moment the tweet goes out or the text, they also are alerted, and we can preemptively get the police into place. But because it's become such a phenomenon, it's not 1,000 now, it could be 12 or 20 who go on this rampage. The police have to continue, not to be a dollar short and a day late on this. They're going to have to use intelligence. They're going to have to get into the network. They're going to have to know when the tweets and the texts are going out and the Facebooking is going out. Because it's not just big cities with mass transit. It's also cities like, I've seen it in Atlanta and New Orleans, where it's the girls. And they call it Facebook flashing. The girls start tossing insults. Yeah. Next thing you know, the girl walks out of her house. She's looking at 150 SWAs, I'll call them, Sisters with Attitude, staring at her, ready to tear her limb from limb. And you're saying, well, what are the police doing? They don't seem to get hip to the technology until after the fact. That's why they need to depend on young people who are familiar with this technology, who know this is how white and black, suburban and inner city kids communicate now, because it's cheap. It costs virtually nothing. And you can gather up a wolf pack, a posse in no time at all.
So the police need to be more proactive than reactive.
Well, they need to understand. They need to depend on young folks. They're so afraid of young people. They're not mature enough. You know, we can send them over with an AK-47 to fight in Iraq and Afghanistan. But God forbid we ask them what this new phenomenon is, because, you know, I've been busting my shoes for 25 years. I'm ready for retirement. Look at all the strikes I have. Hey, you're not in the sync. You're not in the flow of things. Turn to the young people who know how these things operate and have them literally become your eyes and ears so that they don't also fall into this trap of snitches get stitches and end up in ditches. We used to use the term narc 'em off, right? Narc 'em out. Hey, in this case, narc 'em out. Let the young people narc out those who are going to cause these kind of problems, which definitely affect the peace and safety of a community and the economic vitality of a community. Little mom and pop shops, little boutiques, big box stores, people riding the trains, people standing on the street, people trying to catch buses. Once you allow that to go on, it takes on a life of its own.
He is the one, the only. Curtis Sliwa, founder of the Guardian Angels. Let's go back to the phones. Eric, good morning. You're on V-103. Excellent points. What do you think, Curtis?
Well, that's the sad thing of this. We volunteer, risk our lives, as your previous caller had mentioned, to literally ride round and round on the C.T.A., in this case, the trains.
And you got to pay.
Got to pay. Not unique. We have to pay in Washington, D.C. Their metro has had all kinds of problems. We pay in New York City. It's 32 years later. People pat us so hard on the back, we have to go for chiropractic adjustments the next day. We're forced to pay. And you say to yourself, wait a second. You could, a criminal shows up in court, right, to guarantee that they'll come back for their next court hearing. They'll give them a pass to make sure that they're not breaking the law so that they legally come back. And yet they won't give Guardian Angel volunteers, of whom they can monitor and have a relationship with, so that they know we're not taking advantage of using the pass like school kids will misuse the school pass that is given to them. And then, more importantly, to get more information about the Guardian Angels here in Chicago, here in the United States, and all over the world, in 14 countries now, in 140 cities, just go to guardianangels.org. Guardianangels.org. You can click on Chicago, and you can see all the great things they're doing here, and the Guardian Angels are doing other places, and begin communicating directly with Miguel Fuentes, better known as Third Rail. He's our National Director of Operations, so in charge of Chi-Town, Chicago, but also in charge of everything that goes on in the United States.
And I'm telling you, Miguel Fuentes is holding it down. 591 V-103, back to the phones. James, good morning. You're on Chicago Speaks.
Oh, I remember in the beginning, and those were the tough times. I was mentioning the tie during the break. When I first came here, Jane Byrne was the mayor.
She didn't want to have anything to do with you.
Superintendent Breziak was the police superintendent. He was the all-knowing one. You know, he was the grand poobah. He wouldn't permit us to operate, he said. But imagine, I had family members here in the south side of Chicago in what was then called Lockport before you hit Joliet. They wouldn't let me stay at their homes. I had to sleep in Grand Park initially. We had to operate off of a payphone in order to get this group started because it was the will of the people. And that was the kind of negativity that greeted us back then. So you need to be applauded for your effort, because when you were patrolling the C.T.A. in the neighborhoods, we weren't getting the royal red carpet treatment from the officials. We were getting the flea bag treatment.
And James, what prompted you to become a member, and what do you have to say about the Guardian Angels work now?
Well, I've actually made my bones in Chicago. It's my second city. It's the city of my father's family. I have extended family members here and in Wisconsin. So I've spent a lot of time here in family situations, social situations. But the time I've enjoyed the most is in helping to organize the Guardian Angels here with people that I found were just like me when I came out of the Bronx in the late 70s, who dare to care, who understand we're in the first lines of defense. We can't always put the burden on government. We can't always think that without government doing something we can't do for ourselves. And as I said to Ty, this is old school ways. Our grandparents, great-grandparents, they did things for themselves. They didn't expect anything in return. And I'm just trying to resuscitate that old attitude and put a fresh coat of paint on it, brand it differently. Guardian Angels. Could you imagine years ago our grandparents saying, I need to ask permission of the mayor and police chief to get involved? They would have said, no, everybody gets involved. In fact, we're going to wolf down anybody who doesn't get involved, who is an I and me kind of a person, because the strength of our country, both in the poor areas and in the middle class areas, the blue collar areas, was us and we. It was taking care of your own, taking care of your family, taking care of your neighbors, taking care of your block. If we could do that as Americans, most of these other problems could then be conceived of as being solvable instead of beyond our ability to deal with at a neighborhood level.
Stephanie, thank you for your call. I want to work in real quickly because before we go to break, the mayor's on the live line. Mayor Emanuel, good morning and welcome to the program. We're sitting here talking to the national founder of the Guardian Angels, Curtis Sliwa, and he was just praising your brand new police superintendent, how well they work together on the East Coast. Well, I'd like to see more of a partnership between Chicago PD and Guardian Angels, but I'm just being biased, Mayor. That's how I feel about it. Curtis, what would you like to leave us with in closing in terms of people following up and getting more information?
Well, just as the mayor was speaking of his brand new police superintendent, I had an opportunity to spend a lot of time with him. He was a rising star in the New York City Police Department. Went over, helped Cory Booker rescue the city of Newark that was falling into the abyss, and couldn't think of a better choice, because not only is he a great tactician, he understands exactly what the mayor was speaking about, the partnership with community, and he says it in a language that anyone can understand. He understands the tactics of police science that are very important, but more importantly, the sensitivities in the neighborhood. So, Mr. Mayor, great choice. Thumbs up. I don't think you could have found a better candidate in your national search for a new police superintendent.
Well, we have so much on the plate today. Mayor Emanuel, I want you to hold on because I'm going to come back to you in just a minute. Curtis Sliwa and Miguel Fuentes, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure, Ty. Thanks for the time.
You know where to find me. Come back. Let's do it again. Mayor Rahm Emanuel's on hold. We're coming back to our Commander-in-Chief at City Hall in just a matter of minutes on V-103.